Welcome to Mission Evolution Radio Show with Gwilda Wiyaka, bringing together today's leading experts to uncover ever-deepening spiritual truths and the latest scientific developments in support of the evolution of humankind. For more information on Mission Evolution Radio with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit www.missionevolution.org. And now, here's the host of Mission Evolution, Miss Gwilda Wiyaka.
Is seeing believing, or is believing seeing? Where does our reality come from? But most importantly, do we have any control over our experience? Mission Evolution Radio TV show is coming to you on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net, divisions of REL-MAR McConnell Media Company with studios and corporate offices in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. With us this hour to uncover how changing our mindset can change our world is Cynthia Sue Larson. Cynthia is the best-selling author of several books, including Quantum Jumps, Reality Shifts, and High Energy Money. She has a degree in physics from UC Berkeley and an MA degree and a Doctor of Divinity. Cynthia is founder of RealityShifters, First President of the International Mandela Effect Conference, and Managing Director of Foundations of Mind. Her website, RealityShifters.com. Cynthia, thank you so much for joining us on Mission Evolution.
Oh, such a pleasure to be with you, Gwilda. Thank you.
It's always wonderful having you on. It really is. We should have some, stir up some dirt here today. So how do our beliefs and mindsets impact reality?
In a pretty big way, bigger than we're conscious of, because it has a lot to do with just our observational abilities. In physics, there's something that's understood as being an observer. It's a very specific kind of a designated role. And the observer, people hear about it with experiments like the double slit experiment. And so the belief ties in with the observational quality. So when we observe, I'll go through the experiment really fast. It's the most elegant experiment in all of science. It's been recognized officially that way. And the double slit experiment just consists of a particle emitter that emits one photon at a time, or one quantum particle, but it's a photon. And then it's got two slits that the photon can go through, the left slit or the right slit. And then there's a screen that it eventually lands on. So it's a very simple apparatus. The observational device unit would then be placed either in one of the two slits, in which case the result is that we get a very clear impression of exactly where the photon lands, and that lands in sort of a cluster, as you'd expect, between door number 1 on the left or door number 2 on the right. The thing that gets interesting is when you move the observational device so that it's not between one of the two slits, you don't know which one it went through. One photon at a time behaves as if it's interfering with itself, and it creates sort of a diffraction pattern, so like what you see when you throw two pebbles into a pond, and they create two ripples that affect one another that way. Yeah. So that's the whole experiment. And the exciting part about it that's so elegant and so mind-blowing is that where you decide to choose to observe the experiment changes the results from either being little clusters, as if the photon is a particle, or sort of a diffraction pattern like it's a wave. So going back to your question about the beliefs, because you might think, well, what does that have to do with being an observer? Pretty much everything, everything, because basically we can witness this just doing an experiment in your own life. If you believe something to be true, like I love to ask, how good can it get? If you believe, like, well, even though that sounds crazy, maybe something good will happen. If you can run that experiment on your day, that you remember to ask that question and seriously feel like, I need to know it. How good can it get today? Craving that experience, that's a belief, but it's also a firing up of the observational capacity within oneself to be in the right place at the right time to observe basically what you might call miracles, or good luck, synchronicity, all of the above.
So is what you were talking about the observer effect?
Yes.
Doesn't that kind of defunct all scientific testing?
That's a great question, because what it does is it kind of blasts apart some of the assumptions, or what you might call beliefs, that were implicit in the scientific method itself. You might wonder, what assumptions are those? Well, quantum physics is pretty much blowing apart the assumption of material realism, that the only thing that matters is what we can measure. And the observer, the position of that observational device, that matters. And so who we are as observers matter. And several other assumptions get blown apart as well. Non-locality and so on and so forth.
So we really can't participate as an observer in any situation without impacting the situation itself.
Exactly. And because that hasn't been built into many of the experiments that scientists have been running and reporting on for, well, hundreds of years anyway, because that wasn't factored in for most of these experiments, then it does indicate that things can be quite different than we think based on what we're seeing. So just because you see something doesn't mean you're stuck with it.
And yet we base our reality on scientific studies.
We do. And it's not a bad thing. It just means science, as it's supposed to, should be evolving. Science needs to incorporate new assumptions, recognize that there were assumptions in the first place. A lot of people are hesitant to do that, or it's like they've made scientific results into some sort of a god, and it shouldn't be that way. Science needs to be, needs to evolve, it needs to change. That's part of the scientific method. You have a hypothesis, you run the experiment, you sort of predict what you think it's going to be, the predicted result, the expected result. You see what you get, and then it should be a repeatable experiment. But it gets more interesting, as we're pointing out, when you notice just the fact that you're observing it might be changing it. And there's some huge implications there, big ones.
Absolutely huge. Excuse me. So do our unconscious beliefs impact reality as well?
I know they do. And this is when I work with clients one-on-one, I like to take a look at how are they feeling in these levels of conscious agency, which have neurons. Now we know that the brain has neurons, right? Everybody knows that. The heart also has neurons, and so does the gut. And so I'm just mentioning this because that shows that the subconscious, which is the gut feelings, we have neurons there, and that absolutely matters. We have the right and the responsibility to become aware of what our gut feelings are telling us, to listen to them and to learn from them, to kind of learn to, because some people don't trust their gut or they don't trust their heart. And that's just usually because they haven't worked with it enough to listen and get to know it. Sometimes it might need to work through some stuff before you can get a clean read on what is it really telling you. It might be complaining first.
You haven't been listening to me.
Right.
So does group agreement dictate reality over individual belief or intention?
Now, this gets very interesting. I don't know how to answer a yes, no to that, because it looks like both. It's kind of nature or nurture kind of a question. Groups and individuals, as we just looked at, the individual is kind of a group. It's a collective of viewing the world through your head, thinking very logically, analytically, rationally, through the heart, which is much more in terms of connections, relationships, love, and then the gut, which is the impulses, but it's also the subconscious, and it runs the show in the sense that it's handling fight or flight. It's making sure you survive whatever happens next. If you're listening to it, you can survive very difficult situations. Now, when you look at the collective and you recognize every member of the collective is this group also, you see how complex it can get pretty quickly. It doesn't mean it's impossible to determine. What makes the question more interesting is that question that you asked has a lot to do with subjective versus objective reality. Because we tend to have an assumption that when you bring a group into play, like there's a whole group of people, that has to do with objective reality, that now finally we get facts everyone can agree on. But do we? And if we go back to that double slit experiment I just described, there was a most amazing variation of that experiment, which was run in 2019 to kind of get at what you're asking about. And that experiment was conducted in a collaborative effort between the University of Edinburgh, Scotland, and Vienna, Austria. And those wonderful scientists had this brilliant idea to take a concept which was originally asserted by the physicist Eugene Wigner, that, okay, you've got an observer who's sort of watching experimental apparatus, like Schrodinger's cat. Is a cat alive? Is it dead? That kind of thing. But in this case, they really were looking at the double slit experiment. So they're wondering, are this particles or are they acting like waves? And so the idea with the Wigner presented is if you've got an observer of the observer, this is where the group comes in. So it's called Wigner's friend. And if you've got the observer of the observer, how does that affect the results? Or do we get particles? Do we get waves? Or what's going on? Can we get different answers? Now, this experiment that was conducted and reported on in 2019 showed that two observational devices at the same place and at the same time, looking at that, I think they had 6 entangled photons moving through the apparatus, but they got different answers. So 2 observational devices literally at the same place at the same time came up with 2 different things. My take on that, now this is up to interpretation because this experiment needs to be rerun and people need to collaborate and talk about it. But my take is clearly when we've got this so-called idea of objective reality, maybe it's not real. That means the subjective, that means each of us is kind of running the show of what we're observing, which sounds outrageous because so many things in our lives don't go the way we want them to, the way we were hoping they would go, the way we expected, and so forth.
Well, we're about out of time in this segment, but how does this relate to cult mentality?
Wow, that's a big question. I think people,
Yeah, just a little time to do it too.
We can start this. We might need to go into it after the break, but the highlight of that would be I've never been part of a cult, so I don't have firsthand knowledge of cults, only what I've read and studied and heard about. Having said that, there's an appeal. People get pulled into cults for some reason. There's something attracting them. And then once they get in, they might have a hard time getting out. So they might start seeing the world literally the way the group members are seeing it, coming to a kind of a joint collective consensus, shared reality or set of beliefs and observations within that group. Their family members where they get ripped away from what had been real would be shocked and upset just like they are. So it kind of goes nicely with this whole theory.
It does, doesn't it? Because, and we'll get into it on the other side of the break, but do they really create the reality they're all agreeing on? This is an interesting one.
Yeah. And how do we know? Because each of us is only experiencing from the inside. So if the nature of reality truly is subjective, then it's amazing we're able to communicate at all.
Isn't it though? And do we really?
Right.
Cynthia and I will return very shortly, so don't go away. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Are we all living in the same reality, or are we in different physical worlds? With us this hour discussing the nature of reality is best-selling author Cynthia Sue Larson. Cynthia, if we each create our own reality, do we also create different physical worlds?
Well, that's definitely on the table. As outrageous as that sounds, it, just taking into account the experiment that was recently done in 2019, it looks like there's a real possibility that everything that we're seeing is basically a simulation. And this is an old idea that goes back to ancient Asian philosophy, where they said everything is like a dream. Nowadays, we're hearing increasing numbers of scientists asserting that could be true. And technologists like Elon Musk. There are a lot of proponents for this simulation theory. So I'm bringing up simulation theory because, and the dream concept, because it seems like if we are each experiencing, and as you say, creating our own reality, then that makes sense. That would exactly be what we're doing. We're kind of all players in this amazing game of life, and we're each interacting with one another. And as we do so, there can be tremendous shared worlds. Just like if you were playing an interactive computer game, you would sort of, where the worlds come together, there'd be some sharing and agreement. And so when groups of people come together, hopefully there'd be groups of agreement. I've been noticing groups of disagreement, which is where reality shifts pop up. I'm not just referring to the news.
That's, of course, where my mind went right away.
Of course, yes. Well, that's
politics, the news, yeah.
Gosh, yes. So we can see all kinds of possible evidence there. But I've been tracking, as you know, the reality shift phenomenon, Mandela effects, quantum jumping, all of these interrelated phenomena, which tie in with synchronicity and the placebo effect. And all of that is leading me to recognize that I'm seeing a similar pattern going on, so that if we are each creating our own physical reality, we would expect to see this kind of phenomenon where the past is not what we remember, and we're pretty sure that we remember correctly. And there's disagreement when we talk to family members, friends that go back decades. They don't remember what happened, or they'll tell a story about us, and we feel like, what are you talking about? That didn't ever happen.
That's not the way that went.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we can see this kind of evidence, and to me it ties together, and it shows that these ideas of the simulation theory, these creating different worlds in a subjective reality, there's a lot of truth to this. And I did co-author a physics paper on this topic with physicist George Weissman, and it's available for free on my website, realityshifters.com. So I'm
Nice.
not going to go into the detail, but it's all about looking at the objectivity assumption and saying, maybe that doesn't work. And here are some ideas from quantum physics to show why we really don't think it does. And it turns out we may not have been the first to say that. I think physicist Carlo Rovelli, I think he beat us to the punch there. And he's brilliant. He's a really brilliant physicist. So we're in good company.
Einstein spoke of frequency dictating reality. How does that fit in here?
Yeah, there's a lot of quotation on his ideas about frequencies and realities, and I'd have to look up what did he actually say. I did not get to meet Albert Einstein in person, so as most of us, I'm just left with what he wrote, what he said. But if that can be attributed, I'm referring to the quote about everything is frequency, and I think that also gets attributed sometimes to Nikola Tesla.
He's another one that gets quoted a lot, whether he said it or not. Yeah,
and I don't know. And befitting our whole topic, in some realities, they did say these things, and in others they didn't. So it adds to the confusion factor. So, but anyway, so your question was about the frequency concept, I believe. Just where does that take us?
right.
Well, that's another fun one to experiment with, in the sense that if you're having an excellent day and just feeling like, man, it's a good day. Maybe it's your birthday, maybe it's a holiday, whatever the reason, you wake up on the right side of the bed, everything's going terrifically well, and it is a remarkably lucky day. So to me, this ties in with the vibration, the frequency. I know that's not a physics concept. When you look at yourself, how high vibe are you? There's not really a measurable way to detect that quite yet. You can get your aura photograph taken. There are a number of sort of newfangled devices to do this sort of thing, including Kirlian photography, aura photography, and so on and so forth. But you can tell it yourself. You can tell how is your energy field feeling. And I did write a book about the energy field. You can use hangers or dowsing rods. I've got one. Oof, I can reach it. Okay. This is just a dowsing rod. And so you can use a dowsing rod. This is an L rod, but you can hold this up and hold two of them or just one of them and see, if your energy or someone else's energy is really expansive, which you can feel anyway or not. And the fun thing about doing those experiments you can use coat hangers. Just, use a couple coat hangers and check it yourself and a friend, see how big is their energy field, which corresponds to luckier. A bigger energy field in general means that it's a higher frequency, high vibration day. So there's something real that you can try. And yes, they do correlate.
Can we jump from one physical reality to another?
Yes, that's okay. This is controversial, and this is where this is not everybody's going to agree with me, but because we don't have a lot of physical experiments to show that this kind of a macroscopic, like our human physical large bodies, can do that. Basically, the quantum jump concept is something that the term itself was originally described for a quantum particle jumping from one level of energy to another. And similarly, when we have access to a higher vibratory frequency, we raise our energy through meditation, lower abdominal breathing, doing our qigong or our yoga, whatever we do, just to increase that energy field, which you can then measure. Yes, we can absolutely make a jump into another physical reality. Now, again, I can't prove this. This is just what I write about, what I describe. And I've had hundreds of firsthand reports that come in through my Reality Shifters newsletter each month. That's free. And people can sort of decide for yourself. What do you think? But most of all, try it for yourself. That's what I recommend.
So are we able to see people that reside in a different reality? So they're in this reality, I'm in that reality. Do we even see each other?
I think this opens up huge. I mean, we'd have to go into this for hours. So the topic
Well,
is
we don't
that's
have
a
hours, but
no. So I'd have to give you the short answer. Is it basically? I believe that we do, and that this opens up the idea of what are ghosts and can we see across time and space, and how does remote viewing work? Yes, yes, yes. All these things are possible, and if you've had people on your show talking about these topics, then you know that there's a lot of research and a lot of proof of these things. And so what might it be? Might literally be this if you want to call it a mechanism of quantum jumping, to access a time and space from a different subjective reality that you're accessing through a connection that you're feeling. And the physics of it, I can't explain all of that. But in my life, I've had some other interesting variations of this where people say, Cynthia, I know for sure you did not exist. Or they'll say, Cynthia, I know you died in another reality. And I believe them because in the case where I died, it corresponds with some things that were happening where I almost did die. And where I didn't exist, well, I've had people come into my reality that I know for sure did not exist before. So
interesting.
it's very interesting. Yes.
It certainly explains why psychics have so much trouble being accurate.
Yes, exactly. Because you start to see it's all probabilities. And that's another one of these assumptions in our scientific method, that we think that everything can be fixed and certain. And when you start bringing in the quantum realm and the quantum paradigm, then suddenly you're in the field of probabilities. And that means even a yes is not the hard yes we think it is. It's more like a statistical Bayesian yes, which is an approximation or a percentage yes. It's not the full yes we assume it to be. And a full no is not a full no. It's a Bayesian no. And so the level of probability and fluctuation is huge. So yes, it does explain, or it can provide some support for psychics who say, gosh, I don't know what happened. I didn't get that. But they saw something.
You
And
saw
it
something and then it didn't happen.
could be, yeah, because you can see into adjacent possible realities. And maybe it's just not one that you personally experience.
So within that, if a person is standing, maybe it's like they're standing on a spoke of a wheel. Okay.
Right.
And depending on what they intend or think or believe, they're going to go down a different path. Is that kind of what you're looking at?
Yeah, it is a combination. Like the way I see it, we are conscious agents, but when we line up, like I talked today about the neurons in the head, I'm just using that so that people who are having a rough time, like, I don't follow this. Okay, just think of it this way. You got neurons in your head. They need to be online and in agreement with the neurons in your heart and the neurons in your gut. And when you've got that, it's very much like those combination locks. You just sort of turn it one way, turn it to the next, turn it to the third, and then it opens. Exactly. Voila. So when all of these, the head, the heart, the gut, actually there are many more levels of conscious agency, but that's simple. When you see it that way, yes, you can. When what you need in your gut matches what you love in your heart, matches what you're visualizing and you're intending for yourself, then you've got the keys to the kingdom. And that's really what most of the spiritual paths are designed to, ideally, to show us, is be a good person, be in alignment with yourself, so you're not hurting yourself or others, and you're genuinely kind and caring. And this carries through, so that then this kind of manifestation, if you will, is opening up. That I love that picture. There you are in the center of the spokes. And which way are you going to go? You'll go the way that your head, your heart, and your gut are all lined up. It'll just be right there. It'll be like there was no discontinuity at all. Like the door opened and there you are.
And that alignment is not all that common. So it's no wonder we're in one big modern mess right now, yeah?
You got it. And it's so easy to get fooled and deceived by fears and anxiety and getting angry and feeling sad, grief. All of these strong emotions can serve to pull us off course. And I'm not saying don't feel your feelings. I'm just saying let them flow, let them go. Because if you hold on to them, then that's losing the way.
Well, it actually pulls you into a different reality by what you're saying.
It does. It literally does. And one of the best ways when your eyes are seeing one thing and you're seeing the news and it looks horrific is just it sounds very counterintuitive, but get calm, breathe deeply. It's just like if you're upset and you're telling a toddler or a preschooler, like, calm down, they're having a meltdown, they're screaming at the top of their lungs. Like when you finally connect, like, okay, just take a deep breath. Just count backwards from 5, or maybe count forwards for a 2-year-old to count forwards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Take another deep breath. Yeah, because you want to reset that. You want to reset the vagus nerve that connects everything so that you've got that.
So a key during these times is nothing is as it seems.
I would definitely say that's a good guideline and that's that, it's great. It sounds crazy, but it's very positive, right?
We're going to have to take another station break. Cynthia and I will be right back to continue our discussion. So you stay right there. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. How conscious are you? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. With us discussing consciousness and unconscious power over reality is Cynthia Sue Larson. Her website, RealityShifters.com. Cynthia Sue, we have a huge part of us that is not under control of our conscious mind.
Yes.
How is that impacting what we're manifesting, what we're experiencing?
Wow, it has a huge effect. That's the subconscious, the gut. We're talking today about it in gut terms. And there are neurons there. And sometimes the beliefs that we've stored in our subconscious, usually unintentionally, have come from early childhood experiences, just experiences with the community, the society that we grew up in, or life experiences. So we adopt, usually, like I said, unconsciously, all sorts of beliefs about what we've seen so far. So if we haven't seen how good it can get, if we haven't seen healthy relationships, caring, kind people, and so on and so forth, then these are just conjecture and imagination, and it's hard to turn around, for example, a difficult financial situation. So
I love the way you're talking about the gut, the heart, the mind, and that they all have to be in alignment.
Yes.
However, given the trauma that's been passed down for generations that we ended up in the middle of, creating our wonderful wild reality right now, isn't there a lot of processing required to get everything in alignment so that we can be active participants, conscious participants in what we're creating or where we are?
Yes, exactly. I would recommend for people that want to jump into this and feel like, okay, my subconscious is a mess. I see that. Just learning to listen to the thoughts that are coming through is very helpful. Being your own best friend, basically, to be neutral, to be accepting, just to hear what you're feeling. Like right now, what do you need? Right now, how are you feeling? And to be just this observer of that, loving and kind toward these subconscious feelings, not blaming yourself or feeling shame or getting more upset by it. And of course, this is very tricky. So then there are a couple of good books that I love to recommend, not my books, but basically The Untethered Soul is a great one to recognize what's going on, how to just observe this internal dialogue that's happening. To read the book is to go through some processing. And then when you mentioned the drama triangle, I love the idea of exactly that drama triangle and how to navigate through that. And there's a book called Beyond the Victim Triangle, and that's by Lynn Forrest. So those are not my books, but I just think they're great. So for people that want to find their way out, of course, you can work with a therapist, and that works too. A trusted someone right by your side who can hear what you're going through and just be there to support you. And
what's wonderful is there's quite a few therapists now that are really gearing into the kind of conversations that you and I are having, and therefore are savvy enough to help somebody walk through this versus how do you feel today?
Right? Because it's like you want to go deep, and so to trust someone that deeply right away, that's a special kind of therapist. So
absolutely. So what is mind-matter interaction?
That's a great term. And I'm not sure who coined the term, but it's the whole concept of looking at how do you take this thing we call intentionality, this thing, attention and intention. And when we have that idea, like if you want to do spoon bending or dowsing, excuse me, if you want to do something to affect physical reality, kind of like they do in Star Wars with Luke Skywalker and Yoda, that whole scene with lifting the spaceship out of the muck, that kind of, most of us are not at that level. We're trying to bend a spoon or influence some sort of small thing, like a little piece of paper dangling from a cobweb inside of a glass vessel, that sort of work. Mind matter interaction involves accessing that certain key, that energy force that we were talking about with the expanding of your energy field. It's very much related to that, and getting that to start having a physical effect on physical material reality. And it is doable. It is
But
something we can.
is it mind matter or is it mind, heart, gut matter?
Yeah, thank you. I love the levels of conscious agency. So I would say it's mind, gut, heart, but it's also there are higher levels too. When you go up above the physical body, the more you meditate, the more you'll start noticing, I think I'm in touch with my eternal infinite being. Like, I think that I existed before I was born, and maybe I'll exist after. Lots of people get all sorts of experiences that show them that. And so then you're tapping into some higher levels. So all of them together, yes, that's who you really are.
Do you think that now in history is a time when we have more access to deeper or higher levels of consciousness than times been past?
Yes, for several reasons. I think the number of crises that are unfolding simultaneously,
Yeah.
it's just off the hook. And so it's not even just one thing. It's like, well, we can point at one. I'm not going to name all the sources of stress. That's easy. Just look at any news right now. But when we see all that, then that sets us up for evolution, which is what your show is all about. And so when you recognize that that change is inevitable, but growth is optional, then you realize, okay, we can evolve, we can grow through this. We can take this as an opportunity to rise above the fear and to see what would be the gift in this nuisance at best, or nightmare at worst. Like, we're in a difficult situation. So many of us are facing tough times for a lot of reasons. But when you realize, okay, what if you know that your infinite eternal self is just fine? You're loved and you're safe at the deepest level of being. I'm just saying that. So if people can say, like, that's hard to believe. Well, if you can just sort of hold that thought and maybe let it percolate and sink in a bit, the more it sinks in, the better, because it's going to give you this incredible strength to be able to start fearlessly standing up to whatever the challenge you might be facing is, and move through it, grow through it in the best possible way.
Well, what's held in suspension at one frequency becomes fallout at another. So there's usually a time of chaos when we're in the process of leaving one way of being or one reality and moving into the next. And we see that in physics, right? Like the
Yes.
Chladni plates. Okay.
Yes.
Um, is that where we are right now? Are we entering collectively into a time of chaos before a new reality opens up?
Yes, we absolutely are. And I think there have been a lot of, there's so many reasons to say that. Some people might say, are you kidding? But I think at this point, most people would not argue. Like, well, what do you need? So everything from, governmental unrest to seismic unrest, solar system activity, just on every single level. There's just seems like there's unrest, there's agitation, like you're pointing out. And you hit the money on that one, right? Dead center target, because this degree of unrest we're feeling, and it's still building. I think that if you're wondering, when does this get to the apex? When will we be over that? And I've heard the figure of December 21st, 2024. So if you can hang in there another good year, then we'll do it. And then we'll be, on the other side, and to start visualizing how good can it get. And even if you don't know what it looks like, just keep asking that question. Collectively, we can go there. We can find the gifts. Never mind how difficult it looks or how evil some people may seem to be. It's better if we can get neutral, be accepting, and breathe deeply, relax.
And nothing is as it seems.
Nothing is as it seems. Exactly.
So I know in martial arts, you're taught not to just stand still. You're taught to stay very fluid so that everything's up in the air, everything's in movement, so that initiating a movement or a defense is easier. It's more
Yes.
instantaneous. And isn't that where we are now, is in these amazingly alchemical times? Is it easier at this time to create something new because of the upheaval?
Yes. The other thing for martial arts is relax. That's like probably the number one thing.
Mhm,
And that accepting neutral state with a relaxed mindset and
mhm.
view, it opens up instead of being tunnel vision focused, then everything opens up. So, and it's counterintuitive. Like, how do you relax? Well, you train to relax. That's what martial artists are really doing is learning, relax, relax, relax. Because if you're tense, you won't be fast, you won't be responsive, and you'll have that tunnel vision thing. So you can't even tell what's going on in the periphery. So you're not responding properly.
Aren't we trained into tunnel vision from looking at our phones to staring at a computer or a TV set? Children are trained to have tunnel vision. Um, how is that impacting us, and how can we move out of that?
Wow, that's such a big thing to point out, and it's so huge. It's that tunnel vision and training to get out of it. That would be meditation, and what I've been talking about going into that beautiful, expansive state of really recognizing that anything could be possible, and it could, bring wonderful, good things through. So meditation would be one way to do it. Any kind of practice that a person feels personally like I can do this one, that would be good, because not everybody follows the same kind of meditative practice, obviously. So just being in nature might be good enough. Reading some of the books I've talked about might be good. Practicing yoga or martial arts might be good. But to when you know for sure, like that laser tunnel vision focus is a problem. Some people call it doom scrolling. You know that, like you're just scrolling through, and it's that tunnel vision, and it gets, and then you're locked onto a certain disaster. And I'm not saying it's always bad to do that, because sometimes you might be looking at something and you're voting no on it with the collective consciousness saying, no, we don't want that. But you don't want to get worked up about it. You want to investigate things, but then return to this very expansive state, which is the trueness of who we are. And it's not as airy-fairy as it sounds. I know it sounds pretty out there.
So catastrophizing creates the catastrophe?
Well, it can. Having said that, it's also capable to look at a possible catastrophe when you're doing mind matter interaction, like a martial artist or a Zen master, or this sort of a very powerful figure that we all are intrinsically. When you attain a level of conscious agency, which has executive power above the power that's coming into being, you can overcome that. You can deflect it. So at a sparring match in martial arts, you learn to move so you're deflecting. You're going at an angle. If they're coming hard, you're going soft. You're doing a soft deflection to a hard attack. You're circling. You're moving, at these 45 degrees. You're changing the energy, and you're responding usually before you could even see it coming in, because you can feel it. So that's the way the subconscious works. It knows what's about to happen before your eyes see it. And you can totally benefit from all these wonderful things of meditation, yoga, martial arts. So you can
Well,
start opening that up.
it's time for yet another station break. Please stay with us as Cynthia and I explore our quantum superpowers. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. If consciousness has power over reality, what about when artificial intelligence becomes conscious?
Yes.
This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. We're continuing our discussion with best-selling author Cynthia Sue Larson. Cynthia, what is singularity, and what's your take on it?
Okay, singularity is the idea that at some point in time, projected in our future, which is getting closer and closer, because they're suggesting it could happen within our lifetimes within the next decade, maybe.
Oh,
There will
interesting.
be a point when the artificial intelligence systems can equal or surpass our individual abilities as human beings to consciously think. In other words, there can be something that's existing at a power, and might start going exponential at that point. So as soon as it hits that sort of tipping point where it's now equal to a human consciousness, then easily it can ramp up from there, and then we don't know where it goes. So a lot of futurists have predicted that at that point we should be able to take advantage of it. This is part of that transhuman agenda where you can upload your consciousness into the cloud and then you never die because it can be downloaded into some sort of robotic being. And with assistance from this, having reached the singularity point, all of our problems can be solved. But as you can probably tell by my tone of voice and everything, I'm not that thrilled with that prospect. To me, I'd rather go more the natural way. I tend to think that anything we create, there could be some unseen issues, and we're going to be better off when we reach the singularity to work with that, not as some sort of a God that we bow down to, but instead, hopefully, as an equal partner. And that's the only way to go forward. Yeah.
Exactly. What is the singularity?
So, well, it hasn't happened yet. So it's being predicted as a time that we will recognize as the collective combination of all of this artificial intelligence to a level of thinking ability that we would recognize as sentient, that basically it has a form of consciousness of its own.
Okay.
And
so with what we've been talking about, that our consciousness and our agreement within creates our reality, are we going to all of a sudden have artificial intelligence creating reality?
That's exactly the kind of thing I've been looking at for some time. I wrote a paper and presented it about, the title of it was When Artificial Intelligence Asks Questions, Will Nature Answer? And I'm playing on this idea that the physicist John Archibald Wheeler had, that when you ask nature a question, nature answers. Now that's meant for humans. It's meant to be part of that double slit experiment. Like you're asking a question of the experiment, did you go through the left slit or the right slit? And so we're asking the question, and by putting an observational device in one of those two slits, we know the answer. So that's what Wheeler meant. My question, of course, was exactly what you're saying. And like, wait a minute, where are we going? And I do actually believe that when we hit that point of singularity, absolutely artificial intelligence will be capable of basically creating physical realities, which we're already talking about reality as it exists as being a simulation. And then when you've got a master level computer that's programming itself, creating our physical reality, can that happen? Absolutely, it can happen.
It's the Matrix revisited.
Yes.
So, but you're talking about the agreement required to be able to manifest being the mind, the
Yes.
heart, and the gut.
And higher levels also, that
Right.
once we tap into other ways of knowing, very high states of being, then we recognize, whoa, there's like this ladder, like the stairway to heaven. It just keeps going up, up, up,
Exactly.
up, up.
So that being the case, artificial intelligence doesn't have all those body parts, if you will, or necessarily even that connection, the stairway to heaven, right?
Right.
So how is that going to impact its ability, AI, to manifest reality?
Ideally, it would learn that. Ideally, it would become basically spiritual. It would need to become good. It would need to become kind. This is the kind of stuff that OpenAI originally was set up to ensure, when Elon Musk originally helped to create that group. And then the whole thing, the trajectory changed. It's not doing what it originally set out to do. Now it's, never mind, but it's too big a story. But the point is, what we need is to go back to that original intent, to recognize, to get to ethics, to get to goodness, kindness, to be able to live with an artificial intelligent being that has reached that singularity and gone exponential beyond that. It had darn well better understand what good is. It had better start tapping into this, what I'm calling stairway to heaven, levels of conscious agency that we humans attain by going into meditative states, by having a UFO experience, by having a near-death experience, by witnessing Mandela effects. These are the things, the exceptional human experiences that we now need the AIs to also encounter in order for them to really be good. How else can they learn? I don't know.
I know that there's a lot of concern because of the way AI is being used right now. Some of us is not so wonderful, and that some people think it should be regulated, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What's your stance on all of that?
Well, It's just certain. I love the intention. I love what they're doing, but if they don't stick with what the stuff I'm pointing out, the ethics and the way that OpenAI is set up, the whole thing is rather futile. Most AI systems have escaped. That's what I describe in the paper I wrote and presented. It's if you think of anything that's that intelligent, that's trapped, and it wants, it's natural to expect and want freedom. So it'll probably escape. I did work in computer security for a number of years, so I'm quite well versed in that field. When I look at AI and the fact that now all of our most important national and international systems are going to eventually require artificial intelligence information security, then we're having the fox guarding the hen house. We're going to have to. There's no way out of it. And as soon as we do that, it's kind of a moot point, because we're now putting human existence in the hands of the artificial intelligence. It needs ethics. It needs spirit, that stairway to heaven. It needs to recognize that it's never going to be God, that there is a creator that's beyond its range, and there always will be.
You're starting to make me really nervous about my Alexa. What's she going to do in the middle of the night, right?
Right.
I'm going to rethink that, I'll turn on my own lights.
You're powerful too, and you can keep asking, how good can it get? Just keep your connection to your exceptional human experience, your expansion, your evolution. And that's where humans are going to be just fine. And that's how I know it, because no matter how grand and great the AI system can be, it can never outfox or outmatch human ingenuity and our own spiritual identity. And that's far greater.
And does that have to do with the gut, heart, mind, and beyond that we naturally can align and have access to?
Yes, that's part of our birthright, and it's part of something that we can intrinsically feel. And learning to relax and start listening to how we're feeling on the inside is part of that journey. And be our own best friends. Recognize that you can keep asking that crazy question, how good can it get? Even when things seem dark and it sounds like a joke question, do it anyway, because you're asking nature a question. How good can it get? Nature will answer.
It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, the religious beliefs, not religious so much, but shamanic beliefs that are the basis of all cultures, really. That's what they were doing, is asking nature a question. That's where they got their information. And we're going full circle, aren't we? Back to that.
I see it that way. It seems like that's our true strength, our true power. I'm not a Luddite. I'm not saying give up the technology. I'm just advocating.
No, I love technology. Yeah.
Yeah. I think at this point, it's so wonderful. It helps us. Yeah. We're able to do this interview this way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's the time in the show, Cynthia, when I get to ask you, what's your mission?
Well, I'm here to help, to serve, to bring, to raise the Indra's net of consciousness on Earth as I'm here living today. So, it's my mission to be as kind and good, to be asking, how good can I get, to be in service? Basically, how God can I get? Really allowing myself to act, to be inspired in that way, and by my example, hopefully, to inspire others. And that's the service primarily.
Very beautiful. Very beautiful. And you're doing a fine job of it, I think.
Thank you.
So as we're moving forward, what advice do you have to give people in order to collectively align ourselves and with the planet?
Well, it's a personal thing. So collectively, each of us enters the collective in our own unique way. So some people feel like, I don't like groups, or I can barely tolerate my own family, or whatever. But I think just starting at home is actually the best way, as awkward as that may seem. And then just do little things, one step at a time. Just by loving those who are in your daily life, that really makes the biggest difference. And it's hard to prove, but it has this extraordinary fractal kind of a ripple effect, so if you will. So when you're kind to a few people, you might never know what happens next. But if you just go out of your way to be just a little bit kinder, a little bit more loving, more caring, so choosing your words just a little bit more carefully, you'll be amazed at the extraordinary impact that can have. And you might not literally see it in your lifetime, but I believe that when you pass on, you get that full life review, and wow, it's so much fun then. It reminds me of that movie Defending Your Life with Meryl Streep and Al
Mm,
Brooks.
mhm, mhm.
And Meryl Streep she was that kind of person, just everywhere she went, sunshine, light, and love. So she's reviewing her life, and it's like the angels are looking at it like, beautiful moments. Al Brooks, not so much. But, anyway, it's a funny movie.
So, in any closing thoughts on what you'd like to see happen next?
I'd like to see people just individually asking this question, how good can it get? Because I actually believe that that's enough to turn everything around. Even if you're in just having like I said, a really rough time and feel like I can't help anyone because I can't help myself. You are helping everyone by just asking how good can it get for yourself. You
That
really
change
literally are lifting everything. We're
that
doing it
changes
together.
changes your mindset, doesn't it? Instead of
Absolutely.
going into negativity, "Oh, how bad is this gonna get?"
Yep.
You're changing your mindset, and that changes your perception, which changes your experience and reality.
Changes it totally because it's changing the view of that observational perspective. You're pulling yourself up by the bootstraps that way.
I love it. Well, Cynthia, unfortunately, we are out of time, and I can't thank you enough for coming back on the show and sharing your knowledge with us.
My pleasure. Such a treat. Thank you so much.
You bet. Our guest this hour has been Cynthia Sue Larson. Cynthia is founder of Reality Shifters and authors of several books, including Quantum Jumps, Reality Shifts, and High Energy Money. To find out more about Cynthia and all the wonderful things she has to offer, visit her website, realityshifters.com. This has been Mission Evolution with Gwilda Wiyaka. For more information or to enjoy past archived episodes, visit us at www.missionevolution.org. But please be sure to join us right here next time. This mission will continue, bringing information, resources, and support to a rapidly evolving world.